My name is Caleb Spear. This is my wife Audrey, and we are part of the Teshuva band, and we are going to be sharing our story.
Heart pounding like a shotgun. God, please save me. All that icy cords of death.
So when I was born with a half of a heart. The doctors kind of found out about it at birth, but my parents wanted to wait. My mom felt like the Lord was going to heal me. They ended up waiting until I was 6 years old, not knowing that the surgery had the best success at between 5 and 9 years old. And what God was doing, working through my parents to wait, basically had the best success because they waited until I was 6 years old to have the surgery, when the doctors in Colorado wanted to have it at birth.
And you are lucky because you were operated on at about the optimal time that we now know. Yeah, anywhere between the age of 5 to 8 years is probably the optimal timing for this kind of surgery.
Okay. Then there was some complications. We went home, kind of started to drown in fluids around my heart. So they had to race me in, and I was very close to dying. And so they had to basically break my chest open right there before they even got into the surgical room to let all the fluids out.
And there is always the risk of bleeding from one of the suture lines. Okay. This is a very dangerous condition, which is fatal. When you came, I think you were in your last breath, fighting for breathing, and you were hardly alive. And when I was called at home to run to the emergency room, I ran into the ER, and you were blue like your jeans, or even worse. What we did was I requested for instruments to open your chest in the bed in the ER, not in the operating room. There was no time for that. And this relieved the pressure because the blood came out.
Oh.
Quite hard.
That's crazy.
And then we moved you to the operating room to fix everything inside and to get things back to normal.
I was in and out of the hospital, I think, for 9 months. Life was challenging. I wouldn't say I had a whole lot of complications after, but I definitely did, as I got older, notice that, I couldn't run as fast or didn't have the ability to go hiking as long or run a marathon or things like that because the oxygen just wasn't there. My emotional conflicts that I dealt with was the fact of feeling left out a lot, because I couldn't do things like my two younger brothers could. I couldn't keep up with them, and so a lot of times I was always having to ask them to wait up for me, and so it made me feel kind of, I wouldn't say a second-class citizen, but maybe wasn't as important or felt left out a lot. It produced frustration and a lot of anger that kind of boiled over towards my 20s. In my 20s, I struggled with a lot of just anger and frustration. I would get into a lot of verbal arguments and even screaming matches with my brothers and even my dad. There was one instance where I got frustrated enough that I was over it. Kind of worked a dead-end job at the time, and I was really just frustrated with my life. And so I was like, you know what? I felt at the time, it wasn't the truth, but Satan allowed me to believe that I wasn't really worth much of anything, and so I planned to commit suicide. And I actually had the exact road, a part of the highway that I needed to get to a certain speed to veer off and basically slam my car and head on to a part of a bridge. And so I got to the certain mile marker that I need to hit a certain mileage, and I went to go veer off highway, and my power steering ended up going out of my car. And so I was screaming down the road, not able to veer off, and missed my opportunity and started to head towards this curve. And I was like, oh great, I'm gonna roll this car instead of actually trying to kill myself, and I'm gonna be quadriplegic instead. And so I just remember slamming on the brakes, and the power steering kicked back in, and I never had problems with the power steering in that car ever again. So I remember pulling off the highway and going over the railroad tracks, and pulling over and just pounding on the steering wheel and saying, God, you know what, I'm really struggling with all this. And he gave me a verse in Psalms that said, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And so I started to view myself differently. So later in my life, I started to have, my heart started to basically race. And so there was one instance where it started racing and I couldn't convert it. And they freaked and threw me in the ambulance and got it converted back. They basically shocked my heart. So actually in the movies that you see, it's not like actual paddles, it's like tape things on the heart, and you basically, your body arcs and everything like that as they shock you back. So I did great for 5 years after that experience. And then I had a really bad episode where it converted and was really racing hard, and I was raced to university. And I was there for 4 days. And I remember laying in the hospital bed in so much pain. And I just remember looking up at the clock, thinking, God, if this is what my life's to be, just take me now, because I can't deal with this any longer. And so after 4 days there, they were able to get the heart. The Lord didn't answer my prayer, and I'm thankful now that He didn't answer my prayer, but they were able to get it under control, and I went home with a lot of medication. So after my experience in the hospital around 2014, I was working for my cousin, and he hired the secretary. She was somebody that I grew up with in homeschooling, and so I just remember thinking, oh, I should. So I started to pray about it, and then I asked my parents I kind of went to them and said, hey, will you start praying about Audrey?
I noticed he was very outgoing, to say the least, and he would always take time to say hello and chat me up sometimes, and I didn't know quite what to think about that. It made me a little nervous, because just to open up someone I knew of growing up but didn't know super well yet, felt like he was a pretty amazing person to deal with all that day in and day out, and never complained. He never once heard him complain or let on that he was having a bad day. So that was really inspiring to me. We first found out we were pregnant a year and a half into our marriage. I just remember both of us, of course, being very excited. We first realized there was an issue with the pregnancy at our 20-week ultrasound. They weren't 100% on what the issues were. They had to do with the kidneys. Kind of mixed reports, and moved into monitoring pretty heavily, like ultrasounds.
She was 42 weeks, and we were at home, and she went into labor, and it was a long labor. And as far as I remember, I mean, it's a while ago, we had a heartbeat all the way up till basically when the baby came out, and it came out blue and wasn't alive. And so we all went into panic mode, drove to the hospital in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. They tried to revive him there, and it was not successful. The hardest experience for me, I had always wanted to have a child, and it took us a while to get pregnant. And so I was just like, we had finally gotten pregnant, and then God takes our first baby away.
The hardest part for me was not going into labor soon enough. It's very easy for a woman to feel that her body let her down, or that something is wrong with her body, or you did something wrong during a pregnancy. I came to the point where I would have given anything, obviously, to have that baby back, have my world turned upside down for the good. Missing Tuvia, that's a very interesting emotion to feel, is to miss someone that you never got to know the side of the womb.
So after losing Tuvia, we went through a kind of a period of sorrow and dealing with a lot of emotions. Both Audrey and I lash out, just not at her, but just me, just trying to figure out what God was doing. And so since it took us a while to get pregnant the first time, I kind of started thinking, well, maybe this isn't going to happen. And kind of angry at God for taking away what looked to me my only opportunity to have a child. There was a lot of episodes of going up the hill, the back of our house, and screaming. And
so one amazing thing probably the most amazing thing about this whole experience. I just remember being very hopeful that we would get pregnant right away after stillbirth. So I was hopeful, but I didn't want to bank on that just in case Yahweh had a different plan. We lost Tuvia December 9th, 2016. I would say 9 weeks later, we found out we were pregnant again. Due date fell on November 23rd. The special thing about that is Tuvia's due date was November 22nd, 2016. So we were essentially reliving the previous year and the previous pregnancy, because the time frame for me with the pregnancy was going to be the exact same time frame as the previous year. Almost to the day we were going to be expecting another baby and walking through this experience again.
So after finding out that we were pregnant with our second child, we were having some ultrasounds and they started to see some issues with the heart. I remember kind of thinking, you know what, oh man, here we go again. But I remember just really saying, okay, Lord, you know, I've dealt with a heart condition. At least we know we can work through this. We were really praying that God would heal Uriah. When Uriah was born, since they found some stuff with the heart, we basically got transferred over to Vanderbilt. They ended up finding out that he did have a coarctation in his artery at the top of his heart. They were supposed to go in through the side or the back, and they ended up having to go through the front. So that was kind of cool for me, is because he actually has the exact same scar that I have. And so that's going to be a really cool thing for he and I to talk about and experience together. It was really trying going to the hospital. We were tired, and he was there for almost a month. We were expecting to go home in a couple of days, and it ended up being a 3-week period. And I remember just asking Lord, what are you doing? Like, I've dealt with a heart issue. My son, when we lost our first child, and now our second child is having heart issues. And I'm just thinking, God, what is there something that I need to work through? And at this period of time, my brother Jonathan and I started reading this book called Garden of Gratitude. And he basically goes through thanking the Lord, whatever you go through, good or bad. And so it really helped me kind of reset my mind and say, okay, Lord, you brought this book into my life. I'm going through a lot of struggles. I've had issues. I don't understand this. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. But I'm going to choose to be grateful, and I'm going to choose to thank you through all these trials. And it's been a revolutionary mind switch for me. I can say that I'm not perfect at it. I don't always do it. I fall into grumbling a lot, and I really have to get before the Lord and say, Lord, help me be able to thank you. Getting your mind in whatever you're going through, thanking the Lord for everything, the good or the bad, even the ugly, even the downright just horrible stuff that we go through, and just really thanking Him. And it really creates a humble attitude before the Lord of just saying, Lord, I need you. I can't do this on my own. I need you to take me through this, and I'm thankful for this. At the point I would say that I was not grateful. Looking back, I can really truly say that I'm very thankful for my heart condition. I'm thankful for everything that the Lord has taken Audrey and I through, and we're ready for the next adventure. This is my surgeon. Say hi.
Hi. We have similar haircuts.
So this is Uriah. And yeah. Well, I want to say thank you from my heart and from my family's heart so much for what you did for me and my family. So I really do want to say thank you a lot. Thank you so much. That's it.